talk a little bit about another reason why I want to call it Who or What Would the Character Die For. Part of this is that I need to convince my screenwriters and myself as a writer, and hopefully you, that we have to keep the stakes up at a level of life or death. Even in a comedy like Little Miss Sunshine, what happens is Alan Arkin dies, as you remember, the grandfather dies. And if they don't do something fast, the bureaucracy involved with the body will make sure that the little girl misses her opportunity to be in the beauty pageant. And so there, for Greg Kinnear, whose movie it is, he has to make a life or death choice, in the sense that if he goes by the rules, which is what he's been doing the whole movie, and that's part of the theme of the movie, his daughter will miss her greatest opportunity so far. And so he is able to, out of the love for his daughter and the anger he feels against the rules that he's been trying to protect, make the wild and unexpected choice to basically kidnap his father's body and make it to the pageant on time. And again, this is important for his character because he must become the kind of father to his daughter that he has never been, and the kind of husband and the kind of lover of life that he's never been. It's set up in the beginning that the father is in an old age home. It's set up because the Alan Arkin character is old. It's set up that the Alan Arkin character takes heroin and maybe takes a little bit too much of it too often. And so his death by itself, while inevitable, would not be a strong enough catalyst to create a life or death choice, because Greg Kinnear has nothing to do with his dying. But the choice, that the horns of a dilemma that Greg Kinnear is then forced on, which is abide by the rules to do with the interment of the father's body, or to do what he needs to give his beloved daughter what she wants, is the kind of moral dilemma that we're always trying to get our characters onto. So one of the reasons I love teaching Witness is that in Witness, wow, what a choice. Okay, you found true love, and you also feel duty-bound to bring in the killer that, if you don't, will walk away unscathed. What do you do? And what is great about Witness is that the events of Act 2, Part 2, his participating in the life, his feeling the calmness, his having a taste of what a nonviolent lifestyle could be like, creates a dilemma. And it's the dilemma that forces the character to change. And it's also the dilemma that keeps us watching the movie and really rooting for him and sympathizing and thinking about our own lives, because of course part of the purpose of movies is for them to be cathartic. So there is a case where the Kelly McGillis character is present in the beginning of the movie. In Little Miss Sunshine, Alan Arkin is an old guy and he's going to die. In The Godfather, though, Apollonia is a completely new invention, and I think that that's very, very important to figure out, whether you're going to use a character, you're going to use an existing subplot, or you're going to introduce a completely different element. At this level of thinking about a story is where you start to really get some originality. So this life or death matter is both literal and also to imply that you must get your main character into an impossible choice. One of the mnemonics that I like to sort of keep in my mind is that change and death is how the human psyche equates the two events, so that even good change, and my faux Confucianism that I often tell my students, and I'm telling you, is that joy is stress, so that even when there's a good change, there's always stress, and what we most fear as humans is change. So what's important in order to make Act 2, Part 2 is to give the characters no opportunity to stay the same, and that's why creating this impossible dilemma really works. Okay, now another reason that I use the word death is because it really affects us and really creates emotional reactions. And don't forget that we are writing dramatic literature. And there's such a tendency when writers are plotting to just plot and to forget that the characters' emotions and reactions are so important that to ignore them and to simply plot according to what you feel you'd like to happen is to really proceed at your own risk and will very often ensure a much longer rewrite process than is necessary. So that really is a very big part of why I do this. I found that if people start with the four magic questions and then they work with the techniques which are more advanced in how to write a screenplay in 10 weeks, that they write a first draft that is really quite close to what the final draft would be. So the second draft is really organizing and laying out the story as opposed to still finding your story. And this is important because screenplays are not necessarily immortal literature. Screenplays are blueprints, sometimes poetry, sometimes a cross between poetic writing and blueprints, but they're intended to ultimately become something else, whereas other kinds of fictions exist as themselves, and it's the words that are important. So now let's think about your character and try to now go back to the beginning of our seminar and let's answer the question, what is your character's dream? So if you all can follow along in the book or write it down, let's remember what our character's dream was. Now, even if you are going to have your first act be the nightmare, you can't build it unless you know what your character's dream was, because you have to find the nightmare events by reversing or changing or looking at the opposite of what the character's dream would be. And so regardless, as I said, of whether you're going to use them first or second, you must know them. Now, what's important is that we also dream, we don't just necessarily dream on one level. We dream about having a great job, we dream about finding a great lover, we dream about having peace of mind within ourselves. So that's already three different types of dream. We want to take a moment now, since we're at this part of the seminar, to consider not just the main dream, which, as I said in Witness, is to catch the bad guys, because very often your subplot really is about taking one of the other aspects of the character and bringing their dream into this part of the story. So tacitly, without saying so, there's an assumption made that in some very private part of himself that John Book would like to experience love. And this is a choice that you can make. It doesn't really come to fruition, but we do see in the first act that he avoids any personal contact, and sometimes, that which you avoid the most is what you're really seeking. We all know that. In a movie like In the Line of Fire, we know that he's divorced, we know that he's very lonely, and we know early on in Act 2, Part 1, that he tells Rene Russo that he got divorced because he couldn't give up working so hard, and that he would never do that again. And that really creates a lot of the subtext about the relationship, which is, who's willing to give up what for whom. And in the end of the movie, he quits his job and he's going to be with her. So the idea that you raise these questions early in the story, in Good Will Hunting, the question, he's reluctant to solve the equation because he's afraid that his life will change and he won't be with his friends. And of course, he's had such a terrible life that all he's got are his friends. And guess what happens in Act 2, Part 2? Yes, he is on